What you are about to witness is not the story of a single dramatic explosion. It is the story of a methodical, relentless, and historically unprecedented campaign, waged not by admirals commanding great battle fleets, but by engineers, intelligence officers, and drone operators that has effectively erased Russia's naval dominance in the Black Sea and brought the fight directly to the last refuge of what was once one of the world's most formidable regional fleets. This is the story of how Ukraine, a country without a major surface navy, systematically hunted down Russia's Black Sea fleet, cornered it on its own sovereign soil, and on the night of March 1st to the 2, 2026, struck it with devastating precision in what may be the most operationally complex unmanned naval attack in the history of warfare. To understand what happened at Novorossiysk in early March 2026, you have to go back to the beginning, to the strategic logic that Russia believed would guarantee its naval supremacy. When Moscow launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, the Russian Black Sea Fleet was a powerful, multi-dimensional force. Based primarily at its historic headquarters in Sevastopol on the occupied Crimean Peninsula, it comprised 6 Project 636.3 Varshavyanka-class diesel-electric submarines, each capable of launching Kalibr cruise missiles with a range of over 1,500 kilometers. It included modern corvettes, frigates, amphibious landing ships, and an array of support vessels. In total, the fleet was designed to blockade Ukraine's coastline, launch deep strikes into Ukrainian territory, and project power across the entire Black Sea basin. And in the opening weeks of the war, it did exactly that, firing Kalibr missiles at Ukrainian cities and military installations, and attempting a seaborne landing near Koblevo in the Mykolaiv region, a maneuver that Ukrainian defenders destroyed before it could gain a foothold. Then came the Moskva. On April 13, 2022, Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missiles, guided in part by real-time intelligence from reconnaissance assets, struck the Moskva, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet and one of the most symbolically important vessels in the entire Russian Navy. The ship sank the following day, taking approximately 40 sailors with it and hundreds more into emergency evacuation. The loss of the Moskva was not merely tactical. It was seismic. It was the largest warship to be sunk in combat since the Falklands War, and it demonstrated with brutal clarity that Russia's surface fleet was vulnerable in ways Moscow had never anticipated. The Ukrainians celebrated. Western defense analysts took note. And somewhere in Kiev, in the operations rooms of the Security Service of Ukraine and the Directorate of Intelligence, planners began thinking about what came next. What came next was the drone revolution. Beginning in September 2022, Ukraine began deploying domestically produced unmanned surface vehicles, maritime kamikaze drones, against Russian naval assets in Sevastopol harbor. The early attacks were imprecise, and their effectiveness was limited. Of 52 operations conducted between October 2022 and October 2023, only 8 were judged definitively successful. But the technology was evolving at a rate that shocked even experienced observers. The Sea Baby drone family, developed and refined in country by Ukrainian engineers operating under wartime secrecy, grew more capable with every iteration. When Russia began deploying helicopters to intercept surface drones, Ukraine equipped its unmanned boats with anti-aircraft missiles. On December 31, 2024, Ukrainian naval drones shot down 2 Russian Mi-8 helicopters, the first time in history that unmanned surface vessels had destroyed rotary wing aircraft. When Russia deployed jamming drones to neutralize Ukraine's surface fleet, Ukrainian engineers mounted electronic warfare transmitters directly onto their own boats. When fiber optically guided Russian UAVs emerged as a counter, Ukrainian drones began carrying remotely operated machine guns. Each escalation was met with adaptation. Each Russian countermeasure was systematically defeated. The cumulative effect was catastrophic for Moscow. By September 2023, the intensity of Ukrainian attacks on Sevastopol had become unsustainable for the Russian fleet. On September 13, 2023, Ukrainian aircraft-launched Storm Shadow cruise missiles struck two vessels in the Sevastopol shipyard, the Kilo-class submarine Rostov-on-Don and the Ropucha-class landing ship Minsk. Both ships were struck at their moorings. The Rostov-on-Don, already a veteran of caliber strikes against Ukrainian cities, was gutted. The Minsk was destroyed. Russia's Black Sea Fleet headquarters in Sevastopol itself was struck on September 22, 2023, killing a number of senior naval officers and plunging the fleet command into chaos. The decision was made. The fleet's most valuable remaining assets had to leave Crimea. They would relocate to Novorossiysk, a major naval base on Russia's mainland coast in the Krasnodar region, some 350 to 400 kilometers southeast of the front lines. It was a retreat by any honest definition of the word, even if Russian state media refused to call it that. But retreat to Novorossiysk was not safety. It was merely a delay. Ukraine's drone operators had spent 2022 and 2023 proving that the Sea of Azov and the northeastern Black Sea were lethal to Russian naval vessels. Now the range question became the central tactical challenge, and Ukraine solved it with characteristic ingenuity. Sea Baby drones struck the Kerch Bridge, the symbolic link between Russia and occupied Crimea, on July 17, 2023. Damaging its road and rail supports in a strike that had profound logistical as well as symbolic significance. Subsequent drone operations pushed further east, testing and extending the operational envelope of Ukraine's unmanned maritime systems. By May 2024, Ukrainian surface drones had achieved something even more astonishing: the destruction of a maneuvering Russian Su-30 fighter jet, the first time in history an unmanned surface vessel had shot down a fixed-wing combat aircraft. The Navy that Russia still operated in the Black Sea was by this point a shadow of what it had been. Between February 2022 and June 2024, the UK Ministry of Defense assessed that Ukraine had damaged or destroyed at least 26 Russian naval vessels. The Tsiklon, a brand-new Karakurt-class corvette that had entered service only in July 2023 and represented Moscow's effort to rebuild its caliber launch capacity, was destroyed by ATAC-MS missiles at Sevastopol on May 19, 2024, before it had fired a single combat salvo. The Rostov-on-Don, thought to be repairable, was struck again in August 2024 and confirmed destroyed. Russia's ability to launch cruise missile strikes from the Black Sea using surface ships was, for all practical purposes, eliminated. That left the submarines, and it is here that Ukraine achieved perhaps its most breathtaking technological milestone. On December 15, 2025, the Security Service of Ukraine, operating jointly with the 13th Main Directorate of Military Counterintelligence and the Naval Forces, executed the world's first confirmed combat strike by an unmanned underwater vehicle against a submarine. The weapon, called the Sub-Sea Baby, a submerged evolution of the surface Sea Baby family, penetrated the harbor defenses of Novorossiysk, navigated to the pier where a Project 636.3 Varshavyanka-class submarine was moored, and detonated approximately 20 meters from its stern. Satellite imagery released by the Colorado-based firm Vantor confirmed the detonation's aftermath. A substantial section of the pier was destroyed, and the submarine, assessed to have been carrying 4-caliber cruise missile launchers and worth up to $340 million, sustained what Ukrainian authorities described as critical damage. Russia denied any damage, a denial that has become so predictable as to be analytically meaningless. Defense analyst Benjamin Jensen of the Center for Strategic and International Studies observed that the fundamental operational question was not the damage itself, but how the system had penetrated the harbor undetected, acquired its target, and carried out the strike against a vessel moored in what Russia had assumed was a secure sovereign territory base. The answer, which Novorossiysk's increasingly inadequate defenses could not provide, was that it had done so because Ukraine had built a system that Russian doctrine, infrastructure, and counter-drone measures were never designed to stop. Which brings us to the night of March 2, 2026. This was not a single weapon or a single target. This was a coordinated multi-domain saturation attack of extraordinary scale and ambition. According to Russian intelligence-linked Telegram channels cited by multiple open-source investigators, approximately 200 attack drones were deployed in the operation, a combination of aerial kamikaze drones and unmanned surface vehicles operating in coordinated waves. The attack was planned and executed by the SBU's Special Operations Center Alpha, working in concert with the State Border Guard Service, the Directorate of Intelligence, the Unmanned Systems Forces, and Special Operations Forces, a joint force operation reflecting the maturity of Ukraine's integrated drone warfare doctrine. Russian air defense intercepted a reported 172 drones overnight, including 67 over the Black Sea and 66 over the Krasnodar region, according to Russia's defense ministry, itself an extraordinary figure that illustrates the scale of the assault, even accounting for Russian reporting tendencies. The confirmed damage was extensive. 5 Russian warships were struck at their moorings inside Novorossiysk's harbor. The minesweeper Valentin Pikul, a vessel that entered service in 2001 and is designed to escort ships, conduct mine reconnaissance, and support mine-laying operations, sustained serious damage. The Project 1124M small anti-submarine ships, Yeysk and Kasimov, belonging to the Black Sea Fleet, were also struck. 3 Russian sailors were confirmed killed and between 14 and 16 wounded, depending on the source. At the same moment, Ukrainian drones struck the 30 N6E2 guidance radar of the S-300 PMU-2 Favorite Air Defense System, the very system ostensibly protecting the base, and destroyed a Pantsir S-2 air defense gun and missile system. If the irony of that is not immediately apparent, consider it. Ukraine disabled Russia's air defense radar in the same strike package that attacked the ships that radar was supposed to protect. 6 out of 7 oil-loading berths at the Sheskhary's oil terminal, one of the largest petroleum transshipment facilities in southern Russia, which Kyiv has noted supplies fuel directly to Russian forces fighting in Ukraine, were destroyed or severely damaged. A massive fire burned at the port for much of the night and into the following day, visible for miles. The attack also disrupted air traffic across the entirety of southern Russia, forcing flight cancellations and delays at airports in Krasnodar, Sochi, and Gelendzhik, including international routes to Istanbul, Tel Aviv, and Dubai. The Sheskhary's terminal carries additional geopolitical weight that deserves careful analysis. The terminal, owned by Russia's state pipeline operator Transneft, also handles Kazakh oil transported via the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. Among the shareholders of that consortium are U.S. energy giants Chevron and ExxonMobil. When Ukraine struck Sheskhary's in November 2025, the U.S. State Department issued a formal diplomatic démarche to Kyiv, an official protest warning Ukraine to refrain from attacking American economic interests. Ukraine's ambassador to Washington, Ola Stefanishina, publicly confirmed the démarche on February 25, 2026, just 4 days before Ukraine struck the terminal again. The decision to proceed, despite American objections, signals either a strategic calculation that degrading Russian war funding capacity outweighs diplomatic friction with Washington, or a message that Ukraine retains operational autonomy, even as it depends on Western support, or most likely both simultaneously. It is a tension that NATO capitals will have to navigate with considerable care. The strategic implications of this sustained campaign cannot be overstated. What Ukraine has accomplished since 2022 is the functional neutralization of Russia's Black Sea Fleet as a regional power, not through conventional naval warfare, but through asymmetric attrition using low-cost, high-precision unmanned systems that Russia's naval doctrine was never engineered to defeat. Russia's naval infantry, the Maritime Service's elite ground combat arm, has seen its ranks fall from approximately 150,000 personnel in 2021 to around 119,000 by 2025, a reflection of casualties absorbed across the wider war. Senior naval officers have been killed in strikes on command facilities. The fleet commander position has reportedly faced internal scrutiny following repeated defensive failures. The psychological effect of this, of a great power's navy being systematically dismantled not by another navy but by a fleet of unmanned machines, is profound and extends far beyond the Black Sea theater. For NATO planners, the lessons are urgent and transformative. The Black Sea Fleet had for decades been the primary instrument of Russian maritime coercion against Ukraine, Georgia, Romania, and Bulgaria. Its ability to blockade, bombard, and project amphibious power represented a strategic threat that shaped NATO's southeastern posture for 30 years. That threat has not merely been diminished, it has been structurally collapsed. Russia is reportedly attempting to construct a replacement naval base at Ochimchir in Abkhazia beyond the range of Ukrainian weapons. But analysts note that Ochimchir's port infrastructure is rudimentary and incapable of hosting the large combatants that define fleet power. The Black Sea Fleet's dispersal to Novorossiysk has proven not a sanctuary but a hunting ground. For global naval doctrine, the sub-sea baby strike of December 2025 and the saturation swarm attack of March 2026 together represent an inflection point whose implications will be studied in war colleges for decades. Every major navy in the world, American, Chinese, British, French, and beyond, is now reevaluating the vulnerability of its port infrastructure to unmanned undersea vehicles. The fundamental assumption that a warship moored in a fortified sovereign territory harbor is safe has been demonstrably, irreversibly invalidated. Harbor defense, once considered a relatively solved problem of mine clearing and perimeter patrols, must now contend with underwater vehicles that can navigate autonomously, evade detection, and detonate with precision in water too shallow and too complex for conventional anti-submarine measures. The March 2026 Novorossiysk operation also carries a specific message about the future of energy warfare. By systematically targeting the Sheskharis terminal alongside naval assets, Ukraine is pursuing a dual logic: degrade Russia's ability to wage war by sea while simultaneously reducing the petrodollar revenues that fund the war on land. Novorossiysk handles approximately 1/5 of Russia's crude oil exports, the revenues from which flow directly into the defense budget that sustains the invasion of Ukraine. Striking 6 of 7 loading berths in a single night's operation is not merely tactical. It is an attack on the economic engine of the Russian war machine, and it demonstrates a sophistication of strategic targeting that goes well beyond the capabilities most external observers credited Ukraine with possessing in February 2022. The conclusion, for anyone assessing this campaign with clear eyes, is inescapable. Ukraine has not simply degraded Russia's Black Sea Fleet. It has, through 4 years of sustained, adaptive, technologically innovative, asymmetric warfare, effectively erased Russia's naval presence as a coherent fighting force in the Black Sea. The fleet that blockaded Ukrainian ports, launched Kaliber missiles at Ukrainian cities, and threatened amphibious assault against NATO's southeastern flank has been driven from its historic base at Sevastopol, cornered at Novorossiysk on Russian sovereign soil, struck beneath the waterline by weapons that had never existed before, and battered by saturation swarm attacks of a scale and complexity that Russian air defenses cannot reliably defeat. What remains of the Black Sea Fleet at Novorossiysk is not a battle-ready force. It is a besieged garrison sheltering inside a port that has been proven penetrable from above, from the surface, and from below, simultaneously. The Russian naval port at Novorossiysk has not been erased from the map, but as a functioning instrument of military power, it has been effectively erased from the strategic balance, and the world should take very careful note of how it was done and who did it.